The ground gave way under my boot just as the sun dipped behind the ridge. I was miles from the nearest road, out here in the scrubland where the wind carries the scent of sage and regret. My ankle twisted sharp, a snap that echoed in my bones, and I tumbled into the shallow gully, rocks biting into my skin. Blood warmed my leg, mixing with the dust. 3 weeks since she'd left, taking the quiet mornings and leaving me hollow. I'd come here to outrun the ache, alone with nothing but my thoughts and this endless sky. No signal, no help. Panic clawed at my throat as dusk thickened the air. Then, through the haze of pain and fading light, 2 figures crested the edge. Firefighters, helmets glinting. The older one barked orders into a radio. The other, younger, dropped to her knees at the edge, her gloved hand reaching down first, steady and sure. She locked eyes with me, her gaze unflinching, warm against the chill, cutting through my fear like a lantern in the dark, pulling me not just from the gully, but from the hollow I'd carried too long. I lay there, the world tilting in fragments. The gully walls pressed close, jagged shale digging into my back, the metallic tang of blood sharp in my nose. Pain throbbed from my ankle, radiating up my leg like fire through dry grass. Out here, where the land stretches flat and unforgiving, isolation hits different. It's not just distance, it's the weight of knowing no one's coming unless you make them. I'd hiked this trail 100 times, chasing solitude after the breakup. But now every breath rattled with the fear that this was it, pinned and forgotten. Their boots crunched overhead first, then the beam of a flashlight sliced down. "We got her!" the older one called, her voice roughened by years of shouts over sirens. She was built solid, like the ranch hands back home, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd pulled a dozen souls from wrecks just like this. Rope uncoiled behind her, clanking against rock. The younger one followed, her steps measured, silhouette sharp against the twilight. She didn't waste words, just assessed the drop, then lowered herself hand over hand, gear rattling softly. They reached me fast, but the air thickened with urgency. The older firefighter, her name tag read Harlan, knelt first, gloved hands probing my leg without mercy. "Ankle's bad, possible fracture," she said, her tone clipped, professional. "Stay still, ma'am, we're getting you out." I nodded, teeth gritted, but the pain spiked when she tested the swelling. The ground felt alive under me, shifting with every wince. The younger one, Riley according to her tag, positioned herself at my side. She was focused, her movements precise, like she'd mapped this moment in her head 1,000 times. No frantic energy, just that calm that holds chaos at bay. "Breathe through it," she said, her voice low, threading under Harlan's commands. She secured a brace around my ankle, fingers steady despite the fading light. But the extraction wasn't clean. Harlan anchored the line above, hauling on the rope, while Riley prepped the harness. I tried to help, pushing up on my good leg, but the shale slipped, sending a cascade of rocks tumbling. My harness caught, jerking me half up, but the angle twisted wrong. Pain lanced through me white hot, and I gasped, vision blurring. "Easy, hold the line," Harlan grunted from above, sweat beading on her brow even in the cooling air. She readjusted, muscles straining as the rope bit into her gloves. Another pull, and I slid a foot higher, but my arm snagged on a root, tearing fabric and skin. Blood slicked my elbow now, warm and sticky. Riley was there in an instant, her hand pressing firm on my shoulder. "One more," she murmured, close enough I caught the faint scent of smoke and pine from her gear. Not reassuring words, just presence, her grip anchoring me as much as the harness. We tried again, Harlan yelling coordinates into her radio for backup that was still 20 minutes out. And this time the route held. But my weight shifted, the line groaning. I dangled for a heartbeat, heart slamming against ribs, the gully floor mocking me below. "I've got you," Riley said, her voice cutting through, and she wedged her boot against a ledge, taking my weight on her arm until Harlan could secure the next loop. It burned, the effort etching lines on her face, but she didn't falter. Finally, with a last heave, they hauled me over the edge. The ground met me solid, cool dirt under my palms, the sky a bruised purple above. Harlan radioed clear, her breath coming heavy. while Riley knelt to unclip the harness. The immediate crush eased, but my body screamed, every nerve lit. "Let's check you over," Riley said, switching to a med kit, her hands already moving to assess the damage. Swelling, cuts, the deep bruise forming on my ribs from the fall. Harlan stepped back, scanning the horizon for the ambulance lights flickering distant. As the pain settled into a dull roar, Riley's touch lingered a second on my wrist, checking pulse, her eyes meeting mine again. That calm held, pulling me from the edge I'd teetered on. Riley's hands moved over my skin like they knew the map of broken places. She peeled back the torn leg of my jeans with careful fingers, exposing the ankle swollen to twice its size, purple blooming under the surface like storm clouds rolling in over the plains. The air cooled against the raw scrape, and I hissed as she cleaned the gash on my shin, antiseptic stinging sharp. Harlan paced nearby, coordinating with the incoming ambulance over the radio, her voice a steady rumble against the night's hush. But Riley stayed close, her knee pressing into the dirt beside me, blocking the wind that carried the dry scent of creosote bushes. She wrapped the bandage tight, layer by layer, her touch firm but not rushed. When her fingers brushed the inside of my calf to secure the tape, it lingered. A second too long, warm through the chill. Not accidental, or maybe it was, but it sent a quiet jolt up my leg, unrelated to the pain. I watched her face, concentrated under the beam of her headlamp, dark hair escaping her ponytail to stick against her neck. Sweat traced a line down her temple. She'd just hauled me from that pit, muscles still taut under her turnout coat. Yet here she was, piecing me back together. My mind wandered as she worked, the ache in my ankle mirroring the one deeper in my chest. 3 weeks since Lena walked out, her truck kicking up dust on the dirt road, leaving me with an empty cabin and a heart that felt cracked open like parched earth after a false rain. I'd come out here to the Badlands, away from the small town's prying eyes, to let the vastness swallow the hurt. No more shared suppers by the wood stove, no more her hand in mine during evening walks. Just silence, thick as the fog off the river. And now this, pinned by my own clumsiness, the isolation I'd sought turning literal. Vulnerability hit harder out here, where help wasn't a phone call away. Just like the breakup had stripped me bare, no buffers between me and the raw edges. "You're from around here?" Riley asked, her voice pulling me back, casual as she cut the tape with small shears. She didn't look up, just focused on the wrap, but the question hung soft, probing without pressure. I nodded, wincing as she tied off the end. "Born and raised. Family ranch 20 miles east, near the old ferry crossing." The words came easier than expected. Maybe because her hands were still on me, grounding. She glanced up then, eyes meeting mine in the dim light. "Me too. Grew up on a spread off Highway 14, mending fences and chasing cabs in the mud. Thought I'd leave after high school, but the land pulls you back." A faint smile tugged her mouth, shared understanding in the tilt of her head. Rural roots like ours ran deep, tangled as barbed wire, practical, enduring, but prone to rust and unexpected breaks. The conversation eased the tension coiling in my gut. Her questions subtle, drawing out bits of my life without demanding. "What brings you out solo this late?" She pressed gently, packing away the kit, her fingers brushing my knee as she adjusted the brace. "Hiking, clearing my head." I hesitated, the ache flaring, not just from the injury. Needed space after things fell apart back home. She nodded. No judgment, just that steady gaze. Harlan called from a distance, ambulance 10 out, but Riley stayed, her presence a quiet anchor. Then the pain spiked, a fresh throb as I shifted, shooting up my leg like lightning over the ridge. I bit down hard, breath catching, tears pricking unexpected. Her hand found my arm, not clinical this time, but soft, thumb circling slow on my wrist. "Hey," she murmured. Leaning in close enough I felt her breath, warm against the cool night. "It's okay to let it hurt. You've got this." No rush, no protocol. Just her, holding the moment, her touch a balm on the frayed edges. The tenderness caught me off guard, cracking something open. The rawness of my breakup echoing in that simple reassurance. In the vast quiet of the scrub, with stars piercing the sky, It felt like the first real kindness I'd touched in weeks.
Harlan's voice cut through again, headlights flickering on the horizon. "Ambulance is here. We'll get you to the station. Closest spot for a full check. No hospital for hours out this way." Riley helped me up, arm around my waist, her body steady against mine as we hobbled toward the lights. The proximity stretched the night ahead, pulling us closer in the shared rhythm of steps. The ambulance doors sealed us in with a heavy click, the confined space shrinking the world to vinyl benches and beeping monitors. Harlan drove, her hands steady on the wheel, the engine's low rumble vibrating through the floor like distant thunder over the plains. Riley sat beside me on the narrow stretcher, her shoulder inches from mine, the heat of her body cutting the sterile chill. Antiseptic mingled with the faint, earthy trace of sweat from the rescue, and every bump in the dirt road jolted my ankle, sending fresh pulses of ache. The siren stayed off. Rural runs like this didn't need the wail, but the quiet amplified everything. The creak of her gear shifting, the soft hiss of my own breathing, the way her knee brushed mine when the rig swayed. I leaned back against the padded wall, eyes fixed on the shadowed ceiling, trying to ignore how the closeness pressed awareness into every nerve. Out here, space was vast, but this box forced intimacy. No room to hide the raw edges. My heart still raced from the fall, from her hand on my arm earlier, that unexpected softness lingering like dew on grass after dawn. We'd barely spoken since loading up, the air thick with unspoken questions, her presence a steady weight beside me. Riley broke the silence first, her voice low to not carry over the engine. "You hike that trail often? Alone like that?" She adjusted the IV drip connected to my arm, her fingers grazing my skin again. Clinical, but warm. I swallowed, the question probing deeper than the words. "Yeah, it's my spot. Clears the noise." The words came halting, guarded, the solitude I'd sought now feeling exposed under her gaze. "What about you? How'd you end up pulling folks out of gullies on a Thursday night?" She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, leaning back to mirror my posture. Her turnout jacket rustled, the zipper catching the dim overhead light. "Long shifts. Tonight was a call about a vehicle off the access road. Thought it might connect to you at first. Turned out to be a false alarm, some kids joyriding." She paused, eyes on the passing scrub through the small window, blurred streaks of sage and rock. "Last week, though, we had a real one. Older rancher, heart giving out in his barn. I got there. He's on the floor amid the hay, calves bawling around him. No pulse at first. We shocked him back, but it was close. Reminded me why we do this. Out here, you're all there is sometimes." Her story hung simple. No heroics, just the grind of it. Humanizing the role that had seemed so distant before. I pictured her in that barn, hands steady on the paddles, the weight of a life in her grip. It pulled at me, that quiet strength. Not flashy, but rooted, like an oak weathering storms. My fascination grew, tracing the line of her jaw, the way exhaustion etched faint shadows under her eyes yet didn't dim her focus. She'd seen me at my broken point, and now shared her own fragments, bridging the gap in this rolling metal cocoon. The road smooth as we hit graded dirt, the ambulance swaying less, but tension coiled tighter. "Sounds heavy," I said, voice softer. "Carrying that every day?" She nodded, turning to meet my eyes. Close enough I caught the flecks of green in the hazel. "It is. But the good ones stick too, like getting you out before dark settled full." Her words carried a warmth, unintended or not, heightening the awareness of her nearness, the confined air warming between us. We fell quiet again, the conversation's halt leaving room for thoughts to wander. I watched her hands, calloused from ropes and tools, resting on her knee, and felt the pull deepen. Her strength not just physical, but in the way she held space without filling it. The ride stretched, miles ticking by under stars now visible through the windshield, until the station lights glowed ahead, a squat building huddled against the hills. Harlan pulled in slow, killing the engine. "Station's got the setup for observation. No need for the long haul to town tonight. We'll monitor you here till morning." Riley helped me down, her arm steady around my waist again, the touch extending the night's pull as we stepped into the quiet bustle inside.
The station smelled of old coffee and engine oil, the kind that seeps into concrete floors and lingers like a memory you can't shake. Harlan guided me through the side door, her arm under mine for support, while Riley followed with the medkit slung over her shoulder. The main bay was dim, trucks parked like silent guardians under fluorescent strips that buzzed faintly. No bustle here, just the quiet hum of rural nights, where calls come sparse but hit hard. They led me to a back room, makeshift recovery area pieced from cots and folding chairs, a far cry from any hospital sterile white. A thin mattress waited on the cot, blankets folded neat at the foot, the isolation of the place wrapping around us like the hills outside. Riley eased me down, her hands careful on my elbows, the touch sending a quiet warmth through the ache. "Rest here," she said, propping my leg on a rolled towel. The door clicked shut behind Harlan, who muttered about checking the logs, leaving us alone in the small space. The walls were bare block, painted a faded beige, with a single window showing black sky pricked by stars. Out here, miles from neighbors, the quiet fostered something intimate. No distractions to pull the moment apart. Just the two of us, the air thick with the day's residue, dust from the trail, faint sweat, and that underlying pull I couldn't name yet. She busied herself unpacking fresh supplies, laying out a pulse ox clip and a blood pressure cuff on the side table. I watched her, the way her shoulders moved under the heavy fabric of her jacket, unzipped now to reveal a worn department tee clinging slightly from the effort of the rescue. "I'm Riley," she said finally, glancing up as she wrapped the cuff around my arm. Her voice was steady, but closer now, without the wind or engine noise to dilute it. "Full name's Riley Tate. Sorry we didn't get proper intros out there." "Eliza," I replied, the words simple, my pulse quickening under the cuff's squeeze. "Eliza Grant, from the ranch east of here, like I said." The machine beeped, numbers flashing green on the screen, but her eyes stayed on me, not the readout. It was professional, checking vitals, but the proximity lingered, her knee brushing the cot's edge as she leaned in. Boundaries hummed there, her role as rescuer, mine as the one pulled from the edge. But the air crackled with something unspoken, attraction threading through like roots under soil. She nodded, releasing the cuff with a soft deflate. "Tate. My folks had a place off the county line, sheep mostly, until the drought hit hard 10 years back. Sold up, but I stuck around. Joined the department after EMT training in the city. Thought the pace would suit, but rural calls, they stick deeper." Her words wove our backgrounds together, common threads of hardscrabble life, the endless fences, the way rain decides if you eat, the isolation that binds you to the land even when it breaks you. I saw it in her, that same pull, the reluctance to leave despite the weight. "Yeah," I said, shifting slightly, the cot creaking under me. "My family's been on that spread since the 40s. Cattle mostly now. After, well, things ended with my partner, I needed the open. But it amplifies everything out there." The admission slipped out, tentative, testing the space between us. Her gaze held mine, no flinch, just a subtle softening around her eyes. The attraction built slow, in the way she didn't look away, the professional line blurring as she adjusted the blanket over my good leg, fingers grazing my knee again. She sat on the chair beside the cot then, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. Fatigue peeked through, shadows under her eyes deepening, a slight slump in her posture from the long shift. "It's been 14 hours already," she admitted, rubbing the back of her neck, muscles taut like overworked reins. "Started at dawn with a grass fire on the north pasture, chased embers till noon. Then your call came in. Body screaming, but can't clock out mid-rescue." Vulnerability there, raw in the dim light. Her guard slipping just enough to show the toll. Not complaint, just truth, shared in the quiet room. It drew me closer, that glimpse of her under the uniform. The woman who carried the weight without bending. The clock on the wall ticked past 10, night deepening outside, the window frosting with chill. Harlan poked her head in once, dropping off a thermos of soup from the station fridge. Chunky vegetable, steaming with carrots and potatoes, the kind made from garden scraps.
Eat if you can, she said, voice gruff, then vanished again. Riley poured us bowls, handing me one with a spoon, sitting cross-legged on the floor to eat hers. The steam rose between us, carrying the earthy scent of herbs, warming the space. Tell me more about the ranch, she prompted. Spoon paused midair, the question opening the door wider. Personal revelations stirred in the shared meal, the night's hold pulling words from the shadows.
The soup warmed my hands through the chipped ceramic, steam curling up like mist off the river at dawn. Riley sat across from me on the floor, her back against the wall, legs stretched out, bowl balanced on one knee. The station's dim light cast long shadows across her face, softening the edges of her fatigue, making her eyes deeper, like wells in the dark earth. We'd eaten in companionable quiet at first, spoons scraping softly, the only sounds the distant creak of the building settling, and the wind rattling the window pane. But the night pressed in, heavy with the kind of quiet that demands filling, and the revelations from earlier hung between us, unfinished threads. I set my bowl aside, the cot shifting under me with a faint groan. The pain in my ankle had dulled to a persistent throb, but the deeper ache, the one that had driven me to the trail, flared under her gaze. You asked about the ranch earlier, I started, voice low, testing the air. It's home, but lately, it's felt like a cage. She looked up, spoon paused, her expression open, no prompt, just that steady hold. The dim light played across her features, highlighting the faint scar on her jaw, a line from some old call maybe, and I felt the pull to spill it all. My partner, ex now, Lena, we built something there. Mornings feeding the stock together, her laugh echoing in the barn when a calf got frisky. But 3 weeks ago she packed up, said the isolation was eating her, that she needed more than dust and fences. Left me with the quiet, the kind that echoes louder than any storm. The words landed heavy, the emotional weight settling in the room like fog rolling down the canyons. I stared at my hands, calloused from rains and hay bales, twisting the edge of the blanket. The breakup replayed in flashes, the truck's taillights fading down the drive, the empty side of the bed, the way the cabin smelled of her coffee even after I'd aired it out. Out here in the station's hush, it hit fresh. Vulnerability raw as an open wound under the dim bulb's glow. No judgment from Riley, just her listening, bowl set aside now, arms resting on her knees. She didn't lean in or offer fixes, just nodded slow. Her silence a blanket over the ache, letting it breathe without smothering. It's the land that does it sometimes, she said finally, her voice threading soft through the quiet. Holds you tight, but leaves you exposed when things crack. Empathy there, not advice, just shared ground, her eyes holding mine without flinching. It eased something in me, that lack of rush, like she knew words couldn't mend, but presence might steady. The air between us thickened, the proximity of the small room amplifying every shift. Her boot nudging closer to the cot's leg, the faint rustle of her shirt as she breathed. I glanced at the window, stars sharp against the black, and felt the confession pull more. We met at a county fair, her selling handmade saddles, me buying wire for the fences. Thought it was solid, like the old oaks by the creek. But rural life, it wears on you different. She wanted kids, a bigger town nearby. I wanted the spread, the rhythm of seasons. One night, arguing by the fire, she said I was more married to the land than her. Next morning, gone. My throat tightened, the dim light blurring the edges, but I pushed on, the weight lifting slight in the telling. Riley's hand rested on the floor now, inches from mine, accidental or not, the warmth radiating like sun on soil. She shifted then, drawing her knees up, the movement bringing her closer, her shoulder nearly brushing my knee. I get that pull, she murmured, gaze dropping to her hands, fingers tracing a seam in her pants. My last one, Sarah, we lasted 2 years. She was a teacher in the next county over, drove the back roads every day to be with me. But the shifts, they grind. I'd come home after a bad call, smell of smoke and worse clinging, and she'd try to pull me close. I'd freeze, head replaying the faces, the ones we saved and the ones we couldn't. Rural service means you're the first and last line, no backup for miles. She said it was like loving a ghost half the time,
always waiting for the siren to take me away. One winter night, after I pulled a family from a rollover on the ice, kids screaming, "Dad trapped," she waited up, but I couldn't talk. Just sat by the stove, staring at the flames. She left come spring, said she needed someone whole, not pieced together from calls. Her sharing came reciprocal. Voice steady, but laced with the old hurt. Eyes distant, like she was seeing that stove's glow. The challenges of her world unfolded. Long nights covering vast ground. The isolation turning partners into strangers. The way the job etched lines deeper than weather on a fence post. I saw her then. Not just the rescuer, but the woman carrying those ghosts. Her strength quiet, but cracked in places. The dim light caught the tension in her jaw, and I reached out without thinking, my fingers brushing hers on the floor. Accidental, a spark jumping like static on wool. She didn't pull away, just let the touch linger. Awareness building in the air, warm and electric, hearts thudding in sync with the night's hush. We sat like that, hands close, the proximity weaving tighter, every breath shared in the small space. The confessions hung, binding us, the unspoken draw humming beneath. But exhaustion crept in, heavy as dew on grass. My eyelids drooping, body demanding rest after the fall's toll. Riley stood slow, gathering the bowls, her fingers grazing mine again as she took the empty one from my lap. Deliberate now, or so it felt, sparking fresh awareness. "Get some sleep," she said, voice low, pulling the blanket higher over my shoulders, her touch lingering on my arm. "I'll check in come morning." She dimmed the light further, the room sinking into softer shadows, and slipped out, door clicking soft behind her. Sleep came fitful, the cot hard under me, but my thoughts stayed wakeful, replaying her words, the brush of skin, the way her vulnerability mirrored mine. Tension sustained through the dark, a quiet burn like embers under ash, pulling me toward dawn and whatever it might bring. Sunlight slanted through the narrow window, pulling me from the haze of shallow sleep. The cot creaked as I stirred, my ankle a dull pulse under the brace, the room warmer now, carrying the faint tang of diesel from the bay outside. Birds called sharp beyond the walls, their notes cutting the early quiet like scissors through cloth. I blinked against the light, expecting emptiness, but Riley was there, already moving through her morning routine, back to me as she wiped down a counter in the corner with a rag. Her hair was loose, falling in dark waves to her shoulders, no longer confined by the ponytail from the night before. She wore a fresh station tee, sleeves rolled to her elbows, the fabric clinging slightly where sweat had dried from yesterday's work. It was ordinary, this glimpse, her shoulders rolling with each pass of the cloth, the quiet efficiency of someone who'd risen with the dawn, checking gear before the world woke full. I watched her a moment, the pull from last night coiling tighter in my chest, her presence a steady hum in the small space. She'd stayed close, or come back early, her bag slung on the chair, boots lined neat by the door. The confessions lingered like dew on the grass. Our shared fractures exposed in the dark, now tested in the light. She turned then, catching my gaze, a small smile tugging her mouth, no surprise in it, just that calm that anchored. "Morning," she said, voice rough from sleep or the long hours, setting the rag aside. "How's the leg?" "Bearable," I replied, pushing up on my elbows, the blanket slipping to my waist. The air between us felt charged, normalized by the routine but humming underneath, like the low vibration of a truck idling in the yard. She crossed to the cot, checking the brace with quick fingers, her touch professional yet lingering, tracing the edge where tape met skin. No words needed, just that quiet observation, her eyes flicking to mine, holding a beat too long. Harlan's voice rumbled from the hall, calling Riley for shift handover, but she waved it off, grabbing the thermos instead. "Coffee first," she said, pouring 2 mugs from the pot she'd set brewing, the rich scent filling the room, dark and grounding like soil after rain. She handed me one, our fingers brushing in the exchange, accidental, warm, sparking awareness that hadn't faded. We sipped in tandem, leaning against the wall, the station waking slow around us. The clank of tools in the bay, Harlan's boots thudding past. It normalized the moment, this joint task, mugs steaming between us, but the charge built in the silences. Her knee inches from mine, the way she blew on her coffee, lips pursing soft. "You sleep okay?" she asked, gaze on the mug, casual but probing, the question weaving back to the night's edge. Fitful. Thoughts kept turning. I met her eyes, the steam curling between us like unspoken words. The reluctance stirred already, the idea of leaving this bubble, returning to the ranch's empty quiet. "What about you? Shift's starting soon." She nodded, setting her mug down, the ceramic clinking soft. "Yeah, but they'll manage without me for a bit." Her words carried weight, the routine pulling her one way, this pull another. We talked then, easy at first, her mentioning a routine patrol up the canyon later, me describing the ranch chores waiting, the fences needing mend after last week's wind. But it shifted to the return, the discussion laced with evident reluctance. "Doctor in town can see you by noon," she said, checking her watch, the practical edge sharpening. "We can drive you, or call a ride if you prefer." The thought of going back alone hit heavy, the cabin's silence waiting like a held breath. "I'd take the drive," I said, voice quieter, the words hanging. Not ready for the empty yet. Her gaze softened, understanding threading through, the shared rural bind, the way home healed and hurt in equal measure. It pulled us closer, the conversation circling the reluctance, neither pushing but both lingering in the space. She stood then, gathering my things from the chair, my jacket, the water bottle from the trail, folding them neat. As she draped the jacket over the cot's end, adjusting the blanket back over my legs against the morning chill, her hand paused on my shoulder, thumb circling slow, a caring gesture that echoed last night's tenderness. Unexpected again, soft in the daylight, her touch warm through the thin fabric, grounding me like roots in rich soil. "You've got time," she murmured, close enough her breath stirred my hair. The pull rising sharp, hearts thudding in the quiet. No rush, just that recurrence, cracking the normalcy. Awareness flooding the air. The station door banged open down the hall, Harlan calling again, the world intruding. Riley straightened, reluctance mirroring mine, her eyes holding questions. The impending departure loomed, forcing the decision on future contact. Numbers exchanged, or let fade like a distant storm. Tension coiled, the morning's pull demanding an answer as the day pressed in. The morning pulled taut as a wire fence in winter wind, the station's bustle rising like steam from a kettle on the stove. Harlan's voice echoed from the bay, barking orders to the incoming shift, boots scraping concrete as gear clattered into place. Riley helped me gather my things, her hands efficient but slow, folding my jacket over her arm, tucking the water bottle into my pack. The air hummed with activity, radios crackling, a truck door slamming outside. But in our corner, time stretched, the goodbye lingering like dust settling after a stampede. I stood on my good leg, brace steadying the bad, the ache a constant undercurrent, but it was the pull in my chest that throbbed deeper, reluctance rooting me to the spot. She handed me the pack, our fingers brushing again, that familiar spark jumping quiet. "Ready?" she asked, voice low under the noise, her eyes searching mine, holding the weight of the night and morning. "No," I wanted to say, the word caught like burrs in wool. But I nodded, hobbling toward the door with her arm around my waist for support. The contact was practical, her body warm and solid against mine. But it amplified everything. The faint scent of her soap cutting through the diesel, the way her breath synced with my uneven steps. Harlan waited by her truck, keys jingling, the older woman's face lined with the day's start. But she gave us space, climbing in and firing the engine without a word. We paused at the threshold, the open door framing the yard where gravel crunched under tires, the hills rising hazy beyond. The goodbye dragged, words failing in the bustle, her hand still on my elbow, thumb tracing a small circle, absent or not. "Drive safe," she said. The phrase simple, rural shorthand for more. Her gaze locking with mine. Tension peaked there. Unspoken words thick as fog in a draw. The confessions, the touches, the shared fractures hanging between us like unspoken promises. I saw it in her, the hesitation mirroring mine. Her jaw tightening slight, eyes dark with what we hadn't named. The world pressed, Harlan honking once, sharp, but Riley didn't move, her presence a hold against the pull-away. "Here," she said finally, pulling a notepad from her pocket, scribbling quick under the guise of follow-up care. "For the doc's notes, or if the ankle acts up. Call if you need." She tore the page, pressing it into my palm, her fingers closing over mine a beat too long, warm and deliberate. Numbers stared back, her handwriting neat, slanted like wind over grass. Professional cover, but the air crackled with intent, the exchange a bridge over the chasm of departure. I slipped it into my pocket, nodding, the paper crinkling like a secret against my hip. Harlan leaned on the horn again, and Riley stepped back, hands dropping to her sides. One last gaze, lingering. Her eyes tracing my face as if mapping for later. Tension humming electric, hearts thudding in the space between. No kiss, no bold declaration. Just that look. Heavy with possibility. The unspoken draw pulling like gravity in the vast land. "Take care, Eliza," she murmured, voice rough. And I turned, hobbling to the truck, the gravel biting through my boot. The drive blurred, Harlan's truck kicking up dust on the county road, the station shrinking in the rear view. She drove steady, radio low with chatter from distant calls, but my mind stayed back there, replaying the goodbye. The brush of skin, the numbers burning in my pocket. Internal conflict churned as the miles ticked, the ranch drawing closer, its fences waiting like old wounds. Pursue this? Her world of sirens and shadows, mine of soil and silence. Rural lives tangled, but could they not without fraying? The breakup scar pulled tight, warning of more ache. Yet her tenderness echoed, that quiet hold tempting me forward. I gripped the door handle, the truck rumbling over ruts, torn between braking for return and pressing on. Days passed slow as sap in cold, the ranch's rhythm grinding without mercy. I mended fences under a relentless sun, hammer thudding against posts, sweat stinging the cuts from the fall. The ankle healed grudging, brace traded for a limp, but the real restraint gnawed. The paper stayed folded in my drawer, numbers untouched, anticipation mounting like thunderheads on the horizon. Nights by the stove, fire crackling soft, I'd trace the digits in my mind, heart thudding at the thought of her voice, the way she'd leaned in during confessions. Restraint held, fear of the pull too strong, the vastness between us feeling wider with each unspoken call. But the draw built, relentless as river carving stone, days blurring into a quiet storm, waiting for the break. The old diner on the edge of town sat like a weathered barn at dusk, its neon sign flickering against the vast plain, pulling in travelers and locals alike. I'd chosen it neutral, away from the ranch's fences and the station's sirens, a spot where the coffee ran black as creek mud and the booths held the scent of fried onions and rain-soaked earth. 10 days since the numbers burned in my pocket, restraint cracking under the weight of nights staring at the ceiling, her voice echoing in my head like wind through cottonwoods. I arrived early, boots scuffing the gravel lot, ankle steady now, but heart thudding uneven. The door jingled as I slid into a corner booth, the vinyl cool against my jeans, window framing the empty road stretching to the hills. She walked in 10 minutes late, the bell cutting sharp, her figure silhouetted against the fading light. No uniform, just a faded flannel over a simple tee, hair loose and catching the breeze, jeans tucked into boots worn from trails. Riley's eyes found mine across the room, that steady gaze pulling me like gravity, tension unresolved humming in the air between us. She slid into the booth opposite, knees brushing under the table, the contact a spark on dry tinder. "Eliza," she said, voice low, testing the space, her fingers drumming once on the scarred wood before stilling. No preamble, just presence. The diner's hum, clatter of plates, murmur of truckers, fading to background. We ordered coffee, black, no cream to muddy it, and the words started, halting, circling the circumstances like hawks over a field. I almost didn't call, I admitted, mug warming my palms, steam rising like morning fog. After Lena, the quiet felt safer, But you, that night in the gully, your hand on my arm, it stuck. Her eyes held mine, unflinching, the scar on her jaw catching the light from the window. Me too, she replied, voice threading soft. Shifts pull me one way, but thinking of you in that station room, it lingered. Rural like this, connections feel fragile, like wire stretched thin. But the draw's there, real as the land. Honest talk unfolded then, affirming the mutual pull. No rush, just truths laid bare over cooling mugs. She spoke of Sarah again, the way rural service carved hollows, partners fading like distant ridges in heat haze. I thought I'd learn to keep distance, she said, leaning forward, elbow on the table, her knee pressing firmer against mine. But pulling you out, hearing your story, it cracked that. I nodded, the emergency replaying, the fall's snap, her calm gaze cutting panic, the tenderness in her touch that first night. It was the breaking point, I said, voice rough. Alone out there, heartbreak raw, and you showed up. Not just saving my leg, but seeing the rest. Made me want to step toward something again. The air thickened, tension coiling as plates arrived. Simple burgers, grease soaking the bun like rain on parched soil. But food waited, untouched. Her hand reached across, fingers lacing with mine, deliberate, warm and calloused. The contact sealing what words couldn't. Awareness flooded, heart sinking in the quiet booth, her thumb tracing my knuckles slow. This, she murmured, eyes darkening. Us. It's worth the tangle. I squeezed back, the pull cresting, and leaned in. Our lips meeting soft at first, then deeper. A kiss tasting of coffee and earth, sealing commitment in that neutral space. No sirens, no falls, just us. The world narrowing to her breath, her taste, the promise blooming like wildflowers after storm. We pulled apart slow, foreheads touching, her smile faint but real, vulnerability peeking in the curve of her mouth. The emergency had been catalyst, that gully drop forcing paths to cross, the tenderness sparking what isolation might have buried. Reflection settled as we ate, forks scraping plates, the kiss lingering like afterglow on the plain. Hope edged in, amid the rural vastness, the endless sky outside, the road winding to unknowns. But it felt right, rooted. A new beginning carved from the break. As the sun dipped full, painting the hills gold, we stepped out, her arm around my waist, the emotional payoff warming the evening chill. Hands linked, we walked the lot's edge, the vastness holding promise, not weight. Our fingers intertwined against the diner's faded sign, knuckles brushing like roots, seeking soil in the cooling dusk. The plain stretched wide, sage whispering under the first stars, a quiet vastness that once felt empty now hummed with possibility. Her warmth anchoring me, the land no longer a cage but a canvas for whatever grew next. That fall in the gully, the rescue's pull, her unexpected tenderness. It had cracked me open, letting light in where heartbreak had sealed shut. Riley's gaze met mine, steady as ever, and in that moment, the rural silence sang of beginnings, not endings. If you've ever found connection in the unexpected, like a hand reaching through the dark, share your story in the comments below. Moments like these remind us hope hides in the hard places. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of rural sapphic hearts finding their way. Hit that button and join the conversation. Your stories keep this fire going.